obsessed, me obsessed, me obsessed.
The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
I said I wanted solid-state lighting in this place, and that includes the appliance bulbs, so yeah. I also picked up two very small 40s to try and squeeze into the fixture over the stove, and I've got the refrigerator freezer bulbs. These things had quite a premium on them, so what I'm going to do is, if I move, I'll just buy two regular appliance bulbs to put back in the fridge, if I can remember. And because of how bright the new daylight bulbs are in the bathroom, I decided to get one of these little cover-up lights that will have like a smaller amount of light or something like that when at night and stuff along those lines. So yeah, we'll see what it pulls in terms of wattage. First, these cutesy little A15 size LEDs. As you can tell, the globe is mostly decorative. Underneath is where everything happens, so even if this did get smashed to pieces by an incoming pitcher of water or whatever, it should still work. This might even be better off running without the globe than with the globe. It doesn't need a vacuum of any sort. I hear a motorcycle. It's that time of year, folks. It's that time of year. I also picked up these 5-watt LEDs to see if I can squeeze them into the stove fixture. They're not a special A15 bulb, but they're shorter than the ones that I tried squeezing in there last time. So let's see if that's enough to LED my stove. I'm getting a tad obsessed with this stuff. They fit, so the stove is now 10 watts instead of 80. I had to go soft white though. There was no daylight bulb of that size. The low watt daylight bulbs were all the regular size that would have been too big for the fixture underneath and its little cover to keep the grease from splattering. But you can tell that I'm using LED, more directional stuff, because of the dark spot in the middle. Yeehaw! The fridge is now daylight bulb powered, woohoo! But it's making everything look super frosty and lighting things up, showing me, yeah, I need to scrub a few things down in here that I previously couldn't see because of the crappy appliance bulbs that were in here earlier. 15 watt, incandescent, still on sale because the wattage was down around what, these LED things do. But, okie dokie, solid state, finally! The final incandescent is ancient history. Night light! And it's half a watt, maybe, when everything's switched off and this thing kicks on. Cool. Well, that's that with all the LED lighting. Finally, I hope. So now that the obsession with solid-state lighting is over for now, at least until the next Walmart truck comes in and I see more 11-watt, 75-watt equivalent daylight bulbs, what's next? Some people think that 5S is about being a neat freak, it's about cleaning up or something like that, but in reality, it's about how you do things, how you design things. There is as much philosophy behind the scenes with 5S as there is any amount of housekeeping of any sort. So it's that analogy that I keep bringing up. An easy way to explain it would be, if you had to choose between painting your fence every X amount of whatever and having a fence that didn't need to be painted, what would you do? Would you rather have a setup where, I have to go paint the fence again, or find a way to not need to paint the fence? So that's where the whole designing things and, having a plan and knowing what you're doing comes into action. There's also an element of properly distinguishing storage from work areas. For example, one of the major reasons why I swapped out the easy chair for a table is to have a thing to keep clean and a place for stuff to go as it's coming in the door. Because there's previously been problems where I'd come in with a bunch of groceries and there would be nowhere except the floor to put those things. All the counter space in this place now, my kitchen could be rearranged to be more efficient with its space. That's a definite yes at this point. However, it's just, that's the thing. It's like all this counter space, nowhere to put groceries. How does that happen? Not having a plan, not having the right plan, and not designing things properly. So, at the very least, I have a home for everything that has to be dug through, similar to the Great Sift. As a matter of fact, that's the same tote that I was using for the Great Sift, and it still isn't empty. However, the new dedicated garbage doohickey is going to serve its purpose, and I'll put the parts that I want Scrapper Dude to have some fun with in the bucket that used to serve as the makeshift trash can around here. So trash now has a home in that thing, just like it does in the bathroom, in a bucket that looks, or in a trash thingy that looks exactly the same. It's about having standards and knowing what you're doing and having a plan and not winging things. Now, let's see what we can get rid of. First to go to Scrapper Dude, because it contains metal, the bike seat that came with the fat bike. The infamously uncomfortable Mongoose bike seat that came with the fat bike. So, do I really need a backup bike seat? Or better yet, a backup bike seat if my backup, goes missing or what have you? No, I do not. It's not like the bike seat that I have on the fat bike is the last bike seat on the face of the planet. Shoot, I put on a cruiser seat that doesn't have this piece in the middle, and I still haven't ridden the thing yet. So I still have the cruiser seat with the piece in the middle, so technically, this is the backup of the backup of the backup of the bike seat. Totally unnecessary. Scrap! HDMI 1.0, part of that bargain pack of cables I bought at Target once upon a time because I thought I was smart for buying overpriced bargain packs of cables. It's HDMI 1.0, or some really primitive standard that's too old to work with a PlayStation 3. Scrap! Turned on the work light to lighten things up even more as to the problems with this power strip, but I set black and blue as the dominant 5S colors for a reason. Regular white or beige electronics eventually discolors because the chemicals in the plastic change over time. Eventually you end up with something like this disgusting yellowed power strip that scrap! Ladies and gentlemen, my spaghetti cable for landline telephones. Definite scrapper. I haven't needed one of these things since college, when I might be the guy on the other side of the dorm room, across from where the phone jacks came in, blah 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 blah, so your phone didn't have to be right next to your roommate's phone, blah 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 blah. Did I mention cell phones were taking off around that time for the first time, so it was doomed to be irrelevant throw it out. Shwin! I picked this up when the default seat was a little too uncomfortable. Then I found out about cruiser seats and just used those instead. So, there's really no point in having this unless I lose 100 pounds. We can always buy another one. And this, kids, is a voice modem. Why is it called a voice modem? Because it has a microphone and a speaker jack, because it takes your voice. And it's got phone jacks. Once upon a time, you would put one of these things in your computer to be able to make telephone calls over a landline copper circuit instead of being on the internet. You had to switch between them because it was either modem or telephone call, but not both. But this thing could have you, get offline and then make a phone call and then sign back on, and it's outdated and rubbish. Sad that it still works, but there is no more copper phone service around here. It's voice over IP, therefore a little bit of compression, things like that. And even then, landline service with the communications companies around here is more of a business thing, what with all the smartphone stuff that's everywhere. And of course, you can do your own voice over IP via the Wi-Fi if you can get onto a Wi-Fi or some kind of network somewhere and not even need the telephone network in the first place. Let's see what I have in terms of AC adapters, and whether or not I'm needlessly using that outdated yellowed Radio Shack block on the keyboard. Look at how awful and yellowed this looks. And this isn't just something that looks ugly. When plastic starts turning this kind of color, the chemicals are changing and the pliability of it changes as well. So even though this is only a little bit of DC, you could have insulation issues, your device could shut off. The thing is though, check it out. Check out this old Radio Shack block. There's probably a giant transformer in there and then a power supply circuit, and the transformer is like half of the stuff in terms of stepping it down from 120 volts. But 12 volts, 1500 milliamps. So the 12 volt 2 amp chargers of today can do what this monstrosity could do back in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Here's my Cyber Acoustics power block for 12 volt 1 amp negative tip, left over from my first ever pair of speakers that had any kind of subwoofer, and I use that term loosely because it was a 4-inch flappy speaker inside a poof box. A little short on current carrying capability, but it hasn't yellowed yet, despite being almost 20 years old. So I guess there was better plastic in this thing than in the old Radio Shack thing of the time. Handy that. 13.5 volts at 500 milliamps. There's something that would take something like this, I just can't remember what, but it still looks okay, so let's keep it for now. This is the one I was thinking of. 12 volt 2 amp positive tip. Question is, besides how clean is the power in a smaller block like this versus a more traditional power supply, will it fit the keyboard? The Radio Shack piece of junk lives, for now. We need 12 volts, 1.5 to 2 amps, negative tip. Alright, we got some PCI cards here to figure out what to do with. So we have an XFi PCI, an Audigy 2 ZS PCI, and a WinFast TV 2000 XP capture card. So I wonder how many of these can fit in Tuxedo for now. But I'd rather have useless cards in a somewhat useless computer than having them rattling loose and possibly getting broken. Nuts. Not enough PCI slots. Well, as nuts as it may sound, I think I'll put the 2 sound cards in here and bring this up to a grand total of 3 sound cards. And I'll put the capture card in the 2005 system. We'll explain the why as to why I'm doing something this wacko later on. There, that's less add-on cards rattling loose, risking getting broken, for now at least. I went to put the 2 sound cards in Tuxedo and I was like, wait a minute, why is it so tough to put these things in? Oh! Second motherboard. I've never used the PCI slots on this thing before. Funny how things work out. Another 5S thing to consider is that sometimes retail packaging just doesn't cut the mustard. There's been a little bit of a Q-tip explosion in this drawer because here's what they were originally in. Something that was coming apart on both, in 2 places. Well, we decided to make the standard over here a long time ago that bags with the air pushed out of them would be how we keep things organized. So, bada bing, Q-tip bag. There, finally, all set. So, excessive, obsessed, anal, whatever term you want to use, neat freak, I don't care. Fact remains, in order to get this in order, because of that retail packaging that spilled, I had to empty the entire drawer in order to put everything in its new home in the bag. So now I gotta put everything back in. All of that could have been avoided if simply I transferred everything into one of these in the first place. Now this might look familiar to some folks. This used to be the alarm clock that I hid down in the corner there, and of course it kept getting blocked over and over again. But of course, it guzzled a whole 2 watts. Oh no, power hog! This actually was one of the Westclox alarms that I bought in college that failed miserably. Oh, you can't just go straight to the time. It's one of those clocks that I bought in college that the buzzer would not work. And so I sleep through the alarm, so to speak, because I tested it once. I caught this thing screwing up. The little piezo buzzer doohickey, because this doesn't have a radio, so it has no speaker, that thing would go intermittent, and then it would click instead of buzzing. But at least when it buzzed, it was nice and loud. I used to actually have a little bit of fun with this. There'd be times where, yeah, there we go. That'll jolt you awake. When it works. These things were usually louder than the Dream Machine that I had. So I wound up using them, and the Dream Machine kind of just sat and things like that. Because I used to have a black and red Dream Machine back then. But when the little buzzer thingy started going intermittent and I started missing classes, not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. So that's why I like to have clock radios today that have real speakers. So that way I'll know if the radio's not working or the radio goes bad, the alarm goes bad too. This one doesn't even have a radio, it just has a little buzzer that works. I used to actually, in my more trying to be funny days, actually stand up and stomp on this thing to hit the snooze button. No, just literally like stand up in bed, just boom! My roommate would be like, you showed that thing! I'm like, yeah, I wonder why these things keep not working. Either way, it had its day. It's 2 watts instead of 1 watt. Oh no! What does it require for a backup? Oh, yeah. 9. If I can not slam the door closed on the camera, 9 volts. What is this? Early 2000s clock radio? Yep, that would be it. It had its day, it's done. Likewise in the yellow department, and speaking of which, yeah, this thing can go away as well. Remember the Family Dollar fake birds? They all went dead about 2 weeks after getting them, so I've been keeping them around to see if I could pop them open and see what kind of circuitry they ran off of or change their battery. However, little triangle screw in there. Seriously? A special screw that requires a special bit for something like this? Ladies and gentlemen, too much work for too little results. Scrap. A bag for anti-static bags. A tad redundant, but it gives these things a single home instead of having them strewn about. And we can squeeze the air out of them and they work just like this. By the way, these things take up a lot less space when they're folded rather than smushed. The same is true for the anti-static mat that I can never, ever find when I want to use that. And if I find the anti-static wrist strap that goes with this, along with the other cabling, it'll go in this bag too. But that's the thing. I mean, have a place to fold it up, give it a home, mix it in with everything else, just look for the bag that says anti-static mat. Something else worth noting, this old JBL speaker case actually fits one of the camcorders. Not bad if I do say so myself. Now, while we're on the subject of yellowing power strips, if there ever were a power strip that needed to just go away because it was yellowed and it was old, do you think this would fit the bill? Well, there's still some areas that still have the original color, but look at how hideous this is. Oh, man. Aha! Here's the older, better, and more venerable, and even more efficient Sony Dream Machine. Rolling with less than a watt right now, and crank the volume all the way, and you might get a watt out of it. This is the older and more venerable Sony Dream Machine, the black and red one. This is the one that didn't yellow, unlike its newer counterpart. It's actually an ICF. It's actually an ICF C211. The green one that went all ugly was the 212. This is the alarm clock that I went off to college with. And I think the buzzer still works. I just didn't think it was loud enough at the time, and so I didn't think it was loud enough back in the day. But this thing is still in decent shape. Kind of, sort of, well, you know, the one I just set up is more 5S-ish. I could always rig this one up as some kind of backup alarm to remember to shut off. But right now I don't really need, you know, alarm clocks all that much. So I could just clean this one up and either sell it or, you know, just keep it somewhere and maybe deploy it if necessary, like if the new one turns out to be rubbish. This one, interestingly enough, I'm surprised this is less than a watt while its successor is 2 watts. And then all the stuff that's out today is less than a watt to 1 watt. So these aren't very high power devices, not even close, but it's just interesting how, even from an efficiency standpoint, do I have that on watts? Yes, I do. It's not VA or anything. So we got 1 more minute where the alarm goes off. Yeah, see, it's not very loud. That's the reason why I got rid of it. But other than that, I mean, what if this thing could be modded to make it louder? And yes, it's another one of those alarm clocks that has a separate buzzer, because we go to radio, that's way louder. So that's what I was talking about when I said put the radio on something where nothing comes in, and that way you just get woken up by a bunch of static. So all of a sudden, you're awake and you're like, whoa, and stuff like that. It's just too bad I probably would have just kept this alarm clock for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. If the buzzer was louder. Here's another piece of ivory technology, so to speak, that time has not been good to. My first ever micro USB cable from my original Kindle. The insulation's dinging, and I tried to scrub this discoloration off, but in case it was something like rust or something else, or dirt or whatever, it's not. It's problems with the wiring and the material, and of course, we're talking a 2012 cable here, so it's not the end of the world. I have plenty of micro USBs and can get plenty more micro USBs, including better ones with thicker conductors that will charge faster, and ones where this won't happen after about 5 years. I found it! And look what happened from all those times I was like, trying to just yank these things loose from the spaghetti they were intertwined with. Unless somehow a mouse got into the tote and was chewing things up a bit. Is that some hair I see there? Just look at that. Everywhere it went around. Exposed copper, exposed copper, exposed copper. Oh boy, oh boy. Oh, and a clip bleed. It's better to have a plan than it is to wing stuff and find out that things get broken like this. It is garbage. I better see if there's any signs that mice got into this thing. I don't know how they would, but they kind of would have gotten stuck if they did. Nope, it wasn't a mouse. It was good old-fashioned chemistry. So, yes, my hands are getting sticky just from handling this wire and only this wire. Insulation issues. Cheap Radio Shack rubbish. There we go. We're finally at the point where the robot can clean the floor of the project area and get all these fake leather bits that have been coming off the chair to finally get them all vacuumed up. It is a terrible night to continue doing anything else that's all that constructive because it is sticky as all heck. So sticky that the cow just took a dive off the exercise ball. Anyways, so I'm going to let this thing do its thing, at least until it gets stuck on the rug. But at least it's turning around and doing some more things as well. But this is definitely some progress here. Keep in mind though, Geekhouse 5S is not just a vacation thing. If there's a way that I want to make things better, then I'm definitely going to do that. Because you can't really ever say that you've arrived. Because the minute you think you can hang it up, that's when reality comes and reminds you, no, you can always do more. But for now, I'm just going to relax while it's too sticky to do anything else. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by. And now you're seeing why I did all of this in the first place. Clearly, there is more work to do.
Epic fail. Want to support the wackiness? Visit patreon.com/multimediajay.